7 in a row for the Bruins, baby, as they knock off the Kentucky Wildcats by 10, 63-53. A dominant, pretty much start to finish performance. It was close for good portions of this game, but UCLA largely controlled this game, mostly under control. And for 40 minutes, the Bruins were able to keep Oscar Tshiebwe contained offensively. He only had 8 points, although he did dominate the glass with 16 boards, 8 offensive rebounds, and 8 defensive rebounds. For the Bruins, I talked about in the most recent pod, hey, who are your stars and what do they need to do to shine? Jalen Clark, 15 points, 8 rebounds, 4 steals, 15 points for Tiger Campbell, 19 points for Jaime Jaquez Jr., a very quiet but very important 8 points from Singleton off the bench, and UCLA beats Kentucky in a quote-unquote road neutral site game all the way in New York, and the Bruins sweep the road trip in Maryland by 40, beat Kentucky by 10, both double-digit wins as UCLA gets their 10th win of the season. And depending on how things play this weekend, they could vault back in the top 10. But moving forward, UCLA could easily see a roadmap with these quad one wins, potentially, depending on how these two teams do in Maryland and Kentucky, into building themselves into a 1 or 2 seed for March Madness. Well, the Bruins, they did what they needed to do, start to finish, hit the glass. Overall, the Bruins had 42 rebounds to Kentucky's 43. And for as good as a rebounding team that Kentucky is, for UCLA to only be -1 off the glass, get their stars to play, and for Kentucky, they only had one starter in double figures, and that man's name was not Oscar Tshiebwe. It was Wheeler, who had 11 points. The Bruins did their best defensively, shot a good three-point percentage, 46%. And actually, no, that's their free throw percentage. Man, that was horrible. They shot horribly from three. I was like, wait, they did not shoot 46%. They shot 45% from the field. Not the best shooting day, but they kept Kentucky well below 33% as the Bruins dominated, didn't allow Kentucky to score more than 30 points in a single half, and most importantly, evened up the all-time record between the two. 8-8 as UCLA gets a dominant win. There's not a better week than most teams could have had in the country by going on the road in a true road game against Maryland and blowing them out by 40, although the Terrapins have slowly come back down to earth. And with a Kentucky team who, mind you, yes, was off for a week, but had won 4 in a row, UCLA comes through and says, all right, we're not going to get too cocky about the Wednesday game. Everybody knew this one in New York's been circled for a while as UCLA dominates, and they got to go back and play UC Davis on Wednesday before Christmas and then go into Pac-12 play. But this was the week. Will the Bruins figure it out after their 2-game stretch in Vegas? It looks like Mick Cronin's bunch has. And can they keep a certain swagger that they've been gaining and picking up these last few weeks and not turn it into cockiness? There's going to be some times in the Pac-12 against some opponents that UCLA should handle easily that they'll face some troublesome nights. But as we can see, the defense is just relentless. The amount of deflections, hands in the passing lanes, and the 11 steals, forcing Kentucky's 18 turnovers, is what led UCLA to this win. There's so many times Kentucky felt like they were making their run. They're ready to get that big punch, that haymaker to take the lead. And instead, the Bruins held them at bay, while Kentucky did come back to tie it, down as many as 13 in the first half and tied it in the second half at 40. UCLA raced out and ended that game on a 23-13 run, outscoring them by 10 throughout the rest of the game, doing just enough. As I mentioned, UCLA has 3 big men between Nuba, Etienne, and Bona, and while none of them together put together a fantastic offensive night, just keeping Tshiebwe at bay by throwing body after body after body for a Tshiebwe product who is still maybe probably getting healthy. Not sure how healthy he was from off-season knee surgery, but either way, he looked bouncy and ready to go to get the boards, but UCLA kept him at bay. Despite a good offensive start for Tshiebwe, the Bruins held him 4 for 12 and did just enough to keep him away from dominating this game in terms of points scored. UCLA, that you can see that the depth may be an issue at some point in March, but their starting 5 did what they needed to do. Bona, just use those 4 to 5 fouls and go to defense and play good defense down the stretch. Amari Bailey wasn't his best game, 1 for 6, but there will be games that Bailey can come back and have an important role. This game wasn't one of them to show out in New York in front of all the scouts, in front of the nation's eyes. He didn't do that tonight, but still you could see he's learning, and it was one of his off nights since the Bruins started the 7-game winning streak. Hawkins, Clark, Campbell, they speak for themselves. And then overall, Dylan Andrews, McClendon, couple moments here and there where they just came in for a brief spell, and then Singleton off the bench, and the combination of Etienne, Nuba with Bona did what they needed to do, and UCLA walks away with the win. 10-point win against Kentucky, 8-8 all time between the two of the most iconic blue bloods in the sport, and UCLA gets their 10th win and sends Kentucky probably back below the top 15 with a loss, depending on how the top 25 shakes out over the rest of the weekend into the next week over the Christmas and holidays over the next couple of days. But UCLA gets that win. They got Davis on Wednesday, and they should handle the Aggies, and then UCLA finds a way to go into Pac-12 play, potentially back in the top 10, which is where they started. It's nice to see Mick Cronin and his team take that little dip, and then now they're slowly peaking into Pac-12 play. And you don't want to peak too early before March, but it's nice to see the team figuring out their stride and knowing what it takes for a UCLA team in 22 to 23 to win this season. We got all and more stuff to talk about, whether it's Dante to LA. Is that happening? Sources say it might be a done deal. Other might say, no, he's still going to Oregon. We'll talk about that all week long with Locked On UCLA. And don't go away. We got more football bowl news. Is DTR going to play? And, of course, got to talk about the men and the rest of their game. Women's basketball lay the smackdown, quote unquote, beating USC. Not exactly winning that one by 3, but they're doing well and knocked off an unbeaten Trojans team. We've got it all covered with Locked On UCLA. Just let you know, if you're at home and you're hanging out with the friends, putting back a few drinks, and a few becomes a few too many, as the evening comes to an end, make sure to call for a ride. If you live nearby and you think you can make it home okay, it's no big deal, right? No, what's the odds you get pulled over anyway? Even so, what's the worst that can happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Well, you don't need to do that. You all know the risks of driving drunk. You can have, in this day and age, you have the Ubers, the Lyft, you have the driving apps, even taxis. If you live as UCLA in New York, you go get the taxis. It still doesn't stop everybody from getting behind the wheel and driving while under the influence. Police officers are right now out there to stop you guys from looking and driving impaired. That's why they're there, to save our lives. So if you think it's okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead for a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. In the meantime, just know that also BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs. Just go to the mobile device or go to betonline.net. Yeah, go check out BetOnline. As they've got, was UCLA favored? But they ended up winning by 10. You could have won some money. Go to BetOnline. They've got podcasts with your sports betting fixes. They've got it all. BetOnline, where the game starts, and the Bruins, from start to finish, largely controlled this one against Kentucky. Full in-depth analysis coming throughout the week as we highlight what went well for UCLA against Maryland and Kentucky, and maybe we'll find some spots that they still got to improve. Largely, it comes to depth questions down the stretch. Either way, UCLA 2-0 in their biggest week of the season, if you kind of take away that Illinois and Baylor weekend in Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Other than that, UCLA, boom, 10-2, 7 in a row, and maybe in the top 10. Get those hands in the air, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. Let's go. Just throw everything in the air. Yeah, let's go. Woo! Go Bruins. This has been the immediate reaction to UCLA's win over Kentucky. Go Bruins.